Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course from New Earth One Network. This is designed exclusively for your higher self connection and embodiment. Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course. I'm Loren Gailey, and I'm very pleased to bring you Elizabeth April, who is a very special person connected to higher realms, ET realms, and so much more, here to share on this beautiful time of some exquisite energies. April, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It definitely is a divine time to be alive.
Your background is really interesting. I'm sure you're going to share a little bit about that in our talk today. I wanted to check in with you first here about these energies. When we're talking about the 222 codes, do you have some insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite profound because we're in 2022 as well. So what I've picked up on is two is really like the law of binary, the law of polarity. So what we're really going to see, this year at this time is going to be a lot of splitting of realities, a lot of polarity in the global field. And then people who have done the work, people who have ascended into the higher realms and the higher frequencies, we're going to see a lot of pulling together of old cycles. We're going to see a lot of like two sides, divine masculine, divine feminine, coming together in unity. So bringing that polarity together and aligning. And then also a lot of like cyclical stuff. So a lot of cycles in 222 as well, and clearing those old cycles and really just clearing all of that old karma and all of those old energies and moving into new frequencies. So it really truly is this time of new earth, but I don't want to be so over optimistic to say we're going to see new earth in 2022. I really do think we're a couple years out for that because the old systems still need time to collapse in order to make way for those new systems. But I always like telling people, you don't have to wait for the globe. You don't have to wait for the rest of humanity in order to align to those higher vibrations yourself.
Yes, isn't that beautiful? All right, so it feels like this year, we've been talking about it, how, at the beginning of the year, it just seemed like there was a fuzziness. Maybe it was brain fog, or one impression that I got was that it's just our memory of the old paradigm that allows us to bring it into this world here now. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it really is. It just feels different in a way. It just feels like there's something more. And those are what we can create with. And so I see it as a juicy time of really getting creatively going to express, joys and love and ideas and solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. What's really interesting is 2020 and 2021 definitely had their own sets of energies, but it felt like it moved really, really fast. And one thing that I've noticed about January so far is January and then moving into February is that things have really slowed down, which is a really interesting. I think that's part of the brain fog and the fuzziness that you were picking up on. Like it's just like 1 week in January felt like it was like 3 months long. And I'm like, what is this energy? And I really do believe that we are shifting into those higher frequencies. We're shifting into these different timelines. And upon shifting into these different timelines, we're able to really take a step back from the rest of society, the rest of this matrix, and make this clear conscious choice. So in 2022, especially for 222, it's really truly all about taking a step back, observing everything objectively, and making those clear conscious choices for the highest vibration of your own alignment, and then the rest of the world will follow with that. So I do think that the polarity between the timelines and the vibrations and the dimensions in 2022 is going to be very, very clear for a lot of people. And so a really good example of this is the people who are in your life who are very 3D, you could say, or maybe just not so aware or very stubborn. It's going to be more and more difficult to be around those people. It's going to feel like, whoa, like I can't even play that game anymore, And so that polarity, that separation between those densities and realities is going to be even more separated in 2022, which is going to be really positive, but can be very difficult for star seeds and old souls to navigate. We are naturally empathic. We naturally feel the suffering. We feel the separation. We feel the unhappiness of others. And we really do want to step in and help. But what I like to say is create those healthy boundaries, bring that energy back around to yourself, because the more unconditional love that you can show to yourself, the more you're really amplifying that unconditional love for the entire world, rather than trying to funnel it into someone and change them when they're not ready to help themselves.
Very interesting. So some would think that our ability to stay objective, to observe objectively, to be aware of our vibration in every moment, even when we come into other people who may not be there. Some would say that we're able to affect or raise up that vibration. Are we doing that as well by holding steady?
Oh, absolutely. And this is kind of to my point of, if you're focusing on just one person, like I really want to help my dad awaken, then we're playing that martyr game, right? We're playing that very limited, linear, 3D type of, this is the one person I want to help. If you maintain and even retain a bit of that energy and really just go within and focus on that energy and that unconditional love and connection to source within, you're amplifying it. Like we're naturally amplifiers. It's kind of like we can think about ourselves as like portals or vortexes in our own right. And the more that we really kind of cut off the rest of the world and the heaviness around us, and we really ascend to those higher vibrations, we can amplify that frequency to the rest of the planet. Many years ago, I channeled that one star seed of a certain vibration, or one kind of old soul of a certain vibration, affects up to 72,000 people per year. Like really, truly, like we don't even understand the amount of impact that we're making, but we can't make that impact if we're constantly draining ourselves and focusing that energy on just one or two people.
Wow. Okay. All right. Really, really good and powerful. So, share with us your story of channeling um, and the beings that you bring forward. Can you share with us? And I know that the little guy next to you on your desk there, what is this all about for our listeners? Can you share?
Yeah, totally. So, I was born in this lifetime with extrasensory abilities. I believe everyone has, these extrasensory, even psychic abilities. So I was seeing ghosts and spirits and energies and chakras and auras and all that great stuff as a young child. I also got a lot of psychic attacked as a kid as well. I believe a lot of old souls tend to attract that darkness just to understand how to navigate the polarity. Um, At 10 years old, I shut down all of my abilities because I just wanted to like fit in and I didn't want to be the weird kid anymore. And then after shutting down my abilities, I spiraled into a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of even suicidal tendencies because I had I was separate from that source frequency. I was separate from my mission. So at 14, 15, 16, it was just really heavy. And that's when I started to really question, what is the purpose of life? Like, what are we here to do? Like, what is this all about? And that actually led me to my dad, who did past life regression, and he studied that in his, university days. So he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in getting a past life regression from me?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So at 16, I did a past life regression for the first time ever with my dad. And it was incredible. I mean, it really opened me up to what else is possible. Time is simultaneous, reincarnation is real, especially when you have that firsthand experience. So after that, I ended up taking my dad's past life regression notes and I copied them into my own notebook. And 2 years later, at 18, I went away to university myself. And that's how I made friends. I started doing past life regression on other people, on students, whoever would listen, really. And I started to realize, oh my goodness, there's so much to explore. Human beings typically go through the same lessons over and over again. And I started to take this kind of bigger picture approach to what are we doing here? At a certain point in time, I realized that not every person was able to let go of their ego or let go of their current reality to enter into their Akashic records. So I thought to myself, is it possible for me to put myself into a trance-like state and tap into someone else's energy and tap into their Akashic records? So I started to do this. So instead of an hour-long, in-depth trance-like state regression for another person, it took me about 10 minutes to get myself into a trance, and I would tap into their energy, open up their Akashic records and see all of their lifetimes and explain them, to that person. Eventually, I started asking the questions of, can I maybe not have a person in front of me? Can I explore ancient Greece? Can I explore who Jesus was? Can I go back into Buddha days? Who were these people and what were they doing? And really, truly, now I understand that that's just astral traveling, remote viewing is really what I got into. So at that point, at 18, I was, astral traveling, I was lucid dreaming, I was getting back into precognition, clairvoyancy, all of my abilities as a kid, but even expanded tenfold. But if you ask me if aliens existed, I would say, yeah, I mean, there's got to be something else out there in the universe, but why would they be here? Like, why would they bother with like little old us humans? And so one of my past lifetimes that I was remembering and recalling, I was a yogi in Burma, and I was able to levitate and do all these cool things. I'm like, I want to get back there, and I practiced something called Vipassana. And so I actually ended up finding a Vipassana center, 2 hours away from my university. So I'm like, I'm going. So I went away to this 10-day silent meditation Vipassana retreat center. And on the second night of meditation, I was abducted by interdimensional beings. This wasn't an astral travel. This wasn't a remote view. This was a full-on physical abduction. And it was very scary. Like, it was a very fear-based type of experience that I had, mostly because the beings who took me were not very nice, and they weren't really telling me about the process or whatever. But what that experience allowed me to do was once again open up this can of worms and say, not only do aliens exist, but they're here, they're on planet Earth. So then I had all these questions of like, who are they? What are they doing here? Why are they interested in human beings? Why are they abducting us? And just a couple weeks after that experience, I was greeted by a Palladian man in my student housing. And he told me about this meeting that was going to take place 2 days later, which happened to be on December 21st of 2011. Of course, at that time, we're all planning for the apocalypse coming, 2012 and the Mayan calendar and all of that. I was very aware of that. And so I'm like, oh, this is really divine. So on that night of December 21st, he greeted me once again, asked me to come with him in my astral body, and I did. And we had this huge meeting with all of these different beings and many different other like astral remote viewers from planet Earth. And they talked about many concepts. They talked about light and dark. They talked about the 144,000. They talked about star seeds. And this was my first time getting introduced to this organization called the Galactic Federation of Light. And ever since then, I'm 29 now. So it's been about 10, 11 years since I really got opened up to all of this. And ever since then, I've been unpacking these big picture questions and understanding who are these interdimensional beings? What do they want with human beings? And I understand that there's good and bad in every single species, just like there are in human beings. So I'm very connected to different alien interdimensional races. This guy, his name is Grayson. He's my little mascot. So he kind of comes with me to conferences and speaking events and all of that great stuff. And I just really try and help humans understand how powerful they are, what they're here to do, and the fact that we are here for a reason at this very dark, tumultuous, fear-based time. We're here to raise the vibration. We're here for the shift. And it's a really beautiful, incredible time to be alive.
Thank you for that perspective, because we all raised our hand when we incarnated here. Some of us even laughed at the fact that it would be so simple, just be love. We laughed in the face of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's hard to remember. So let's go to today's world. What is the information that you're getting? Because on one point, it's a lesson, it could be a lesson to stay centered in the heart in the face of everything and don't get caught up in any of it. So do you get messages around that from the Galactic Federation or the Pleiadians?
Absolutely, yeah. So every month I actually host, it's called the Galactic Federation Summit, and I remote view over to the mothership. This is what I've been doing since I was 18, but now I bring in all the people who are also interested in it, which is so cool. And I basically ask them, like, what's going on with humans? What's going on with planet Earth? What do we need to know right now? And how do we best navigate? So there's like two things that are taking place. When we explain anything, we need to kind of explain it at a physical and a vibrational level, at a 3D and a 5D level, because it is really split right now. So it's hard to say that this is the experience that everyone is having, because we're not all having the same experience at this point in time. And there's also the 4D as well. Okay, essentially at a physical level, the old world system is collapsing. Now, back in 2018, I got a message from the Galactic Federation. They were very clear about it, that there is a cycle, and the cycle is between 2020 and 2024 is meant to be the collapse of the old world systems. They told me that back in 2018. Which is, no surprise when 2020 hit and everything started shifting. And everyone was taken out of their paradigm and their programming. And so if you really think about it, we're only really 2 years into this collapse, right?
Not even.
This is, not even. So
okay, we're halfway through. We're halfway through.
We're halfway through, exactly. Okay. So this is why so many members of the community are like, when's disclosure going to happen? When's the new Earth coming? It's coming. It's already happening. And we've heard it many times before that the light has already won. And in a sense, absolutely, without a doubt, that is our trajectory. There's no going back from this. This is the path that we're on, but we're in the middle of the transition. And this is where we see the instability in our systems. This is where we see the purging out of the darkness. This is where we see the collapse of hopefully the religious, hopefully the education, hopefully the financial industries moving forward into the next 2 years. And it's already started to happen if you really take a look at things from that view. So at a physical level, we're seeing the collapse of the old systems. At a vibrational level, we are entering into these new world systems. And the number one thing, the number one lesson that they keep telling me over and over and over again, no matter what I ask them about, is stay in 0 point neutrality. Stay in objective awareness. And this is kind of how I teach the information that I teach is, of course, always take it or leave it, because you always have the free will. But also see both sides of things objectively. it's not all dark shadow government agendas, but likewise, it's not all butterflies and rainbows, right? So we have to be able to see everything objectively, not choose a side, not attach ourselves to any one outcome, but continue to hold the objective awareness so that we can say we are creating the new earth. And I think one thing that really scared me in 2020 for sure was, and even 2021 a bit, was seeing how many incredibly powerful star seeds and volunteers and old souls were succumbing to the fear, the amount of fear. And it's like, I just want to shake them to say, you are creating the new earth frequency. Whatever you think, whatever you believe, you are projecting, you are amplifying. And for you to only focus on, and really what I call it is the 4D level of the conspiracy, of the agendas, of the darkness, of the shadow governments, of all of that. If you only focus on that, that is what you are creating for us. So it's kind of like continuously reminding people how powerful they are, and the fact that we have awakened a little bit ahead of time, or ahead of the 8 billion people, to hold this frequency. And we cannot hold the frequency if you're in fear. You're one of the ones who are supposed to be holding that higher frequency. And so that scared me a little bit, of like, oh my goodness, like I get the rest of the people who are asleep. Like, I don't really blame them, because they're just a part of the system. And I know eventually they'll kind of come around to the change and the awakening. But to our own people who have been in it for so long, to still be so stuck in fear, that worried me. And the GFL, the Galactic Federation, reminded me, hey, we're all on track. It is an experience that we have to go through. And they called everything with the vaccine, with COVID, everything that's taking place. They said, this is the ultimate test. And if we can view this objectively without any fear, because ultimately the fear that this community has is the fear of death. This is it. This is the depopulation agenda. And if we can view it and say, whatever I believe it is going to do for me is what it's going to do for me. Same thing I believe with vibration, same thing I believe with food, same thing I believe with the environment around me. Whatever I believe this environment is giving me is what it's giving me. Whatever I believe this salad or this fish is giving me, it's giving me. And your belief is everything. Everything that's taking place is the ultimate test for volunteers, for the rest of humanity, to rise above the polarity. And we're getting there. Slowly but surely, we are getting there. And luckily, we've got another 2 years of transitioning this. And I just want to say one more thing. Moving into 2025, what I believe is that the old world systems, and we're talking about 3D systems, so it takes time to unravel that. I believe that the old world systems will be collapsed enough to bring in new solutions. We already have free energy technology. We already have educational solutions for starseed children. We already have alternatives to medicine. We have all of these things. They have been blocked. They have been stopped by the ones who are in charge for a reason. And once they are out of the picture, we get to bring in the solutions full force, because we have the space for them, and we have the conscious awareness of the people asking for them too, because it all comes down to our awareness and our free will. And there's only so much that the Galactic Federation can do for us if we are unwilling collectively to help ourselves.
So beautiful. It really keeps us on track, holding our vision of New Earth. We have our vision of New Earth. We have to hold it. And I too have been saying this whole time that this is an incredible opportunity to get creative for New Earth. And it is the physics, the vibration, and the frequency that gets us there. So this is the ultimate test. What do we do, or what would you recommend can be done for those experiencing fear? Is there a process? I will admit, I read the newspaper. I am a journalist in my old life, in broadcast, television, and radio. So it's hard for me to stomach broadcast news. And it's so elevated, and that is an old system that will be changing as well.
Yep.
So when I read the newspaper, I'm actually reading between the lines, and I'm
Yes.
seeing, on one hand, okay, for example, I'm from Boulder, and we just had a devastating wind, fire, hurricane blow through and take out 1,000 homes. And I'm not there right now, and I was not there. And what I can sense is that it has created an awareness on a heightened level for the community to really, I mean, there's new love for community, there's new concern for the environment. So on the 3D side, it's really quite tragic, but on the 5D side, I feel like crying right now because I can feel the love that comes forth from people going through this situation. And this is where we're at. And so, do you have any comments about moving in this energy, or how you would shift from a 3D perspective into looking at the higher vibration of all of it?
Absolutely. Before I get into that process, I want to talk about a download that I got a week or two ago. And I had a bit of a temper tantrum, is really what it is. So I had a bit of a breakdown, and I was like yelling at the Galactic Federation, and I'm like, guys, like, come on. Like, usually I'm good. Like, usually I'm super neutral, very, like, I'm holding the space. But for whatever reason, it just got to me. I don't know what that breaking point was, but I'm like, just save us already, which is funny because this
Uh,
is what I hear from people all the time. And it doesn't work that way. And I understand it doesn't work that way because we have to ask for the help in order to get helped. And that's a free will thing and non-intervention thing. So I had a mini breakdown, and then I was able to really easily get out of that. And I really observed myself in that. I'm like, what just happened? Like, what was that? So the word that I came up with, and this is really important for so many volunteers right now. Like, I did a video on this, and the amount of people who are like, wow, like, same. I call it belief fatigue. Okay. So there's a lot of us who have been holding space for the new earth for a very long time. There's a lot who are like recently awakened. Like, I woke up in 2020, which I'm like, bless you. Like, that's great. Like, and hopefully more come, right? But there's a lot of us who's like 10 years, 25 years, the new earth is coming, the new earth is coming. And the belief fatigue especially comes into play when you listen to a lot of other channelers and people who are saying, 2012, it's going to happen. The new earth is going to happen 2012. Nope. You know what? It's going to be 2017. Something's going to happen. And I don't want to say that these people are wrong because I've channeled timelines as well. What I understand about timelines now is that there's an infinite number of timelines. The more that we shift into a higher frequency, the more all of these timelines become simultaneous and at a quantum level. They're all happening all at the same time. It's very difficult to say this is the ultimate end goal for humanity because it's happening, its change is happening so rapidly. So what's taking place, what I've observed in myself from that little tantrum and from other people is we're experiencing belief fatigue, which is we've actually been holding the space. We've been holding our breath. We've been holding the vibration for such a long time, hoping that every single turn is going to be the turn, that we get disappointed over and over and over again. So the belief that we have is not being met by the experience of the shift. So it's like there's a lot of output of belief and there's not as much input of experience, which creates belief fatigue. And this is where you get to this breaking point of like, screw it, it's not going to happen, right? We all know it is. I mean, it's already happening, it's taking place, but we do get a bit fatigued in that. So what I recommend for people who are like, whoa, like never really thought about it, but this is where I'm at. What I really recommend is let go of any and all timelines. I know I just kind of gave you a timeline, but let go of the expectation of when it's going to happen. Hold faith that it is currently happening. I mean, there's no like, even in 5 years from now, it's still going to take place. It's still happening. It's like this, it's a lot of systems. It's a lot of global, energy to shift. So it's going to happen for our whole lives. So it's more so about being in the journey rather than seeking the destination. The more we seek the destination of the new earth, when is it coming? When is it here? Is it here? Is it now? When is it happening? is the more we're going to create that belief fatigue, and we're really going to get gassed out with holding the space. So that's what I recommend, is really just being in the journey of it all and understanding it's already here, it's already happening, and like we have the entire world shifting to show for it, right? So just realizing that, that's important to note. Now, as far as moving from 3D into 5D, super important. And I love that you're once again one of these new earth way showers, leaders, teachers, whatever you want to call it, where you're able to be like, I can observe the 3D and I can observe the 5D, which is fantastic. This is what we need from teachers. It's so exciting for me to kind of see that as well. So I want to give you an example of 4D, because a lot of people are like, where did the 4D go? Because 4D does still exist, and it's actually probably more rampant now than ever before. It's people who are out of the autopilot programming, they're out of the matrix, they've questioned, okay, there's more than this, but then they get sucked into the conspiracy, they get sucked into the agendas. So in 4D, for your example of this fire wind tunnel, the government did it. HARP, the weather program system, they created this wind fire tunnel, right? That would be the 4D perspective of that example. The 3D is like, oh my God, it happened and it's all over the news and the people are just in the fact that it happened and it's just nature and it takes place. 4D is like, I'm questioning everything and like, I'm questioning, who did this to us? It's a bit of the victim as well. Now, 5D is, it, regardless of who created it, it happened for a reason. So why did we co-create this experience and what can we learn from it, right? So we really it can be overwhelming to say, what's 3D, 4D, and 5D perspective of what's happening, but it's also so liberating to see the different layers of the perspectives of what's taking place. So here's my process to transmute 3D into 5D. Okay, first of all, recognize where the reaction is. If you don't recognize what we're reacting to or what's in a lower vibration, then you can never change what you don't recognize. So the awareness is number one, and it's key. So fear of the vaccine, fear of COVID, fear of, weather events happening, fear of the government systems, what have you, okay? Step two is to objectively observe it. So one of the things that I did is I actually developed and put out like a little mini course for people who have fears around the vaccine. And I'm, it's a free will thing. It's like, do what you feel is right for your body and for you. But I also want to help people get rid of fear. That was the main intention. So on the landing page of this course, I have a picture, and I was really triggered by this picture personally. And it was a picture of someone getting an injection, right? And I'm like, oh God, just so many just fears and anxieties and all these things come up in me of like, what are they really putting in that? And like all of that, the 4D. And so what I said in this landing page is I said, take a look at this picture. Does this picture trigger you? If the answer is yes, I want you to look at it for an extended period of time. And every time a reaction comes up in you, I want you to observe the reaction objectively. And that reaction will go from like, oh my God, this is wrong, this is bad, the government's all of this. And then eventually, once you hit that peak of anxiety, peak of reaction, you'll start to notice that the reaction gets less and less and less and less the more that you observe it objectively. And all of a sudden, 5 minutes goes by, maybe it takes 20 minutes, maybe it takes 2 hours to observe the thing that you react to. And all of a sudden you can observe that picture without any reaction whatsoever. So step two is the number one, the most energy output that you need in this whole process of transmuting is the objective observation. So any fears that we have, any attachments that we have, any major reactions that we have, what we can do is we can think about it. The reaction will come up. What we typically do is we distract ourselves from the reaction. Okay, I'm going to watch some TV instead, or I'm going to take a walk instead, or I'm going to try and move away from the reaction, so I'm not going to observe it. If we actually just sit with the reaction, we replay it over and over. It's kind of like replaying the worst case scenario. All of a sudden, it doesn't become the worst case scenario anymore, and you're no longer a victim to it, because it's like, bring it on. I'm not reacting to it. It's not fearful in me anymore. Step one, realize, bring awareness to the reaction, the things that you want to change. Step two is that be objectively observe them over and over and over again until you notice that there is no more reaction there. It's really just 2 steps, right? Once again, second step is going to take the most amount of time and energy from you and do it over and over and over and over again, maybe for a couple days, maybe for a couple weeks until you notice that the reaction is gone. Step 3, if you really want to get handy with this, it's reprogramming. Now, what kind of reassociation do you want to make with the thing that you originally had a reaction to? For example, right? So if you have like a glass of water and say, for example, this is tap water. And I'm like, oh, tap water and the fluoride and all the stuff that I'm never going to drink tap water. You observe it and you're like, oh, that's a reaction I want to get rid of. I don't want to be a victim to the fact that I think like that every time I drink tap water, because what is that doing to my body to believe in that, right? Screw the thing itself. It's the belief that really creates that effect. So then you take the time, second step, to objectively observe that. Observing, no longer am I reacting to tap water. It's not a thing. It doesn't affect me because I don't believe in that anymore. Third step, if you really truly want to take it to the next level, now what do I want to create as far as a vibrational frequency or a belief around tap water? You don't have to create a new connection if you don't want to. You can just keep it objective and aware. But what I like to do is I like to create new higher vibrational associations to things that I had previous reactions to. So for tap water, it's like, I can transmute fluoride. I can transmute anything that they put. I'm actually that powerful. I'm that strong that I can transmute that. And as a matter of fact, every time I drink tap water, I'm going to feel the connection to the ocean. I'm going to feel the connection to the rivers of the planet. I'm going to feel the love energy that is just embedded into water itself. And it's going to hydrate me and nourish me, and I'm going to be better for it. And then you create that new association by replaying that association every single time you drink tap water or every single time you observe the thing, right? So it's really just the repeated pattern of observing objectively to neutralize the original reaction. And then it's the repeated pattern of reassociating with a new vibration by observing that over and over again and reprogramming yourself.
Wow, that is so comforting. And Elizabeth, all I can say is, wow, I'm so hopeful for this world when people like you, here you are, you did this, you really began at 16, and by 18, you were well on this path. Myself, I kind of had to go through my 30s and get beat up by the world a little bit more before I really came into my own. But this is really good. And your example of your process, your description of your process actually helps explain the feeling, the quantumness of a phrase. As you know, going through these past 2 years, I like to say it kind of felt like I was gaslighting myself with these conspiracy theories, like gaslighting myself. And then that's where I, not knowing what I was doing, but going through this process that you were saying, and a phrase, someone, a near-death experiencer who died several times, basically said, "What if nothing is wrong?" And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, okay, I get that. But one day I was driving down the road and it totally clicked, and it just like decompressed me. It was like a fuse it was diffused, like these beliefs, and it was like, wow, what if nothing is wrong? And that's our responsibility. Once it was like getting us over that threshold of that 4D barrier into 5D, so that now, I mean, we really can create our new earth with this frequency, with this vibration. So it's still the deep inner work that we must do to get over it. You know, what came up for me in the beginning was, you know, when this whole thing came out in 2020, I saw myself dying in the plague. So that set me on a whole, in a past life, on a whole different journey. I mean, I saw it. I was out on a hike and I saw the room where I passed and all of it, and this resentment that I had. So this whole process for me has been, gosh, like a healing of that lifetime or bringing it into wholeness of what it is. And we just don't have to be there anymore. So this is a fascinating journey that we're all on when we see, and I think you mentioned the see the both sides and not to choose. And as I was reading the newspaper, I know some would say, why? How do you even do that? But for me, it's good because, like I say, I can look through and read between the lines to see patterns of new earth, but I can also see both sides. I can see both sides. I can see how the media is using over here on one side is using words that, come on, I do have a bone to pick with the media. And so this is part of the change and the shift as well. We're going to see new forms. We're already seeing new forms of communication. And then it comes to a personal integrity in how we communicate, right? And so that's when there's YouTube channels popping up everywhere, there's a responsibility, I believe, that each of us have in speaking this. And so from this perspective of unity consciousness, of 5D, I am eternally hopeful. Aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. When 2020 hit, I was so excited. Like I couldn't stop smiling. And I'm like, oh my God, everyone's like freaking out. But this is amazing. It's finally here. It's finally happening. Like this is, I couldn't have asked for anything more. Which maybe sounds weird to some people. But yeah, I mean, we needed a global event to take place to shift the entire consciousness of the planet. And people lost their jobs. What does that do? That takes them out of the 9 to 5, that takes them out of the matrix, that forces them to change. I think it was incredible. The amount of people who are awoken in 2020, the amount of people who are waking up right now, in 2022 and 2021 is things are happening a lot faster. Things that took me 4 years to go through are taking people like 2 weekends. I'm like, wow, but we had to go through it. We had to go through the sludge, in a sense, and really experience that and navigate that. So one thing that I had a download on, maybe a year ago was, and I'll just kind of bring it up to people. So 3D people are afraid of COVID, right? They're like, I'm going to get sick and I'm going to die, because that's just what the media is projecting. 4D people are, well, I'm going to die from the vaccine. So if I take the vaccine, I'm going to die. Whether you're 3D or 4D, the fear vibration of I'm going to die is the same. You're still feeding into the matrix. That's exactly what they want, is to have that fear of death, because that's the only card that they have left. Is like, we've created a lot of fear mongering in the past, but this is the ultimate. It's the fear of death. 5D people are, well, death is actually just an illusion, and here I am right now. You know what I mean? I'm here for the ride. So really getting to that place where we don't have the fear, and we understand that we volunteered to be here for a reason, and to hold that space is so, so important. And to really strive to get to that place where we don't have a fear of death, because it's just a cycle. And if you choose to leave the planet, that's exactly when you chose to leave the planet. And the fact that you're here right now is something that you predestined, contracted. I try and remind people that you could have been anywhere. You could have chosen any dimension, any body, all across the entire universe. You had all of that to choose from, and you chose to be in your body right here, right now. That is powerful, right? Because it's so easy for us to think like, why is there so much suffering? Why did I choose this lifetime? Why did I choose to observe all of this? Why am I in the middle of this? It's like, you came here for a reason, because we need you, honestly. And you're here to kind of shift through some of that fear, and to raise that frequency.
Beautiful. You just listening to you, I know that others watching or listening to this take so much comfort from your words, and we're like, yes, we've got this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, I just want to remind everyone to hold these principles of New Earth creations from the physics, vibration, and frequency. And it is quantum. This is our connection to our higher self from the heart center. and bring forward solutions. We've got this. We can do it. And I know people at December 21st, 2012. I was down in Peru for that, and we woke up on the day of the 21st, and it said, "Oh, the powers that be are still in charge." And I came home from that trip and I cried. I laid on my bed. I thought it was going to be like a love fest where everyone would see everyone and just want to hug
Yeah,
and love on
yeah.
everyone. But now I realize it has to happen from within, from the heart space. And it seems like we're in a pressure cooker to surrender to love. I
It
mean, it's
all
as
co-
simple as that, right?
it all comes back to unconditional love, and just realizing how we've been taught in society that love is conditional, so I always like to say, whenever I say the word love, I say unconditional love, because it's completely different than the love that we've ever been taught before. And we cannot unconditionally love interdimensional beings if we cannot unconditionally love our neighbors, or another country, or a different race, or a different culture. I mean, it's crazy how it's such an us versus them system right now. And we cannot unconditionally love a plant or a little snail on a leaf if we do not first unconditionally love ourselves. So it really starts from here, and then you step into that love fest. And once again, I'll repeat it, I really don't think we need to wait for the rest of the world to awaken for us to awaken first. Like, we're so indoctrinated to believe that we're selfish if we ascend first. We're selfish if we feel happy first. But that's the system. That's what it wants us to believe. And I really think taking those steps in the right direction of understanding that we deserve that happiness, we deserve that unconditional love, and no one's going to give that to us other than ourselves. And then we can amplify that frequency to the rest of the world and really share and connect in that, rather than waiting for the rest of the world to do it first and then saying, okay, I'm allowed to do it now. That's not what we're here to do. That's not what people who are listening to this right now are here to do. We're supposed to be the leaders, the way showers. There are 8 billion people who are just on the precipice, on the verge of awakening, and we're here to hold that space and that objective neutrality, and to be able to go through the ego death and the pain and the suffering first, and in order to hold space for them is so, so key. So the unconditional love is going to be the first and ultimate last step for all of us to step into.
Very well said, and so empowering. Thank you. All right. Well, in our closing moments, there's another question I'd like to ask. You had mentioned the interdimensional beings who abducted you, and you said it was a physical abduction. So, my question would be, well, actually, it's twofold. Can you share more on? You said they were not too friendly, and how do you feel about them now? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, are we all going through these experiences, but just not aware of them?
Yeah, great question. So, how do I feel about them now? I feel like they were just doing a job, and they didn't really have the compassion or the capacity of compassion. So I do believe that a lot of like fear-based abductions are misinterpreted. And I believe that, there are good and bad, in every species and every civilization. And I wouldn't necessarily call them bad. I would just call them, task oriented and not really compassionate to who I was, or to just a human. So that's kind of how I feel about that. And I think it was so important for me to contract that experience, because pretty much every interdimensional contact I've had is really positive. And I think in order to avoid being the over optimist and to really connect with other people who have had low vibrational or fear-based experiences, I needed to start off with that, to say, this is possible too. And this is a very real thing that does happen. And it's important to see that side of things, and not just, it's all rainbows and butterflies, right? With ET contact. So that was really important. I'm glad I contracted that to happen. And then as far as having these experiences, like I just smile so hard when you were like, yeah, I was like going on a hike and I had this past life, flashback, or I was like driving in my car and I had this realization and it hit me. That's how I live my life. Like it literally feels like we're living this double life of like, I just sat on my couch and I had this download, and it happens on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis. Those are the experiences that I'm really excited for humanity to have, is the realization experiences, because no matter what we say, no matter how we explain things, it's like, yeah, cool, love yourself. Like I've heard that before. But until you experience it, you don't really know. Like, you really don't really know what that means. Like, you know what that means intellectually, but the experience is what locks it in. And there is no going back from that experience. And so, whether it be an abduction experience, which I do believe is happening to humanity and to humans, but I really believe it's more so the experience of, I feel like a being is in the room, or experiencing plant medicine and meeting one of these beings in another realm, or having a meditation and all of a sudden a being shows up in your mind. Like those are, I think, more of the experiences that we are having these days rather than the physical. Like I think we're open and aware enough and trusting enough in our own experiences and our own selves to be open to those methods rather than the physical. The physical really just feels like it's 3D. It takes a lot of time and effort and energy on their part, on our part, to really show up and then to navigate through all of that fear. I really think that we can shift our entire perception in the blink of an eye, in the sitting down of a couch, in the drive of a mundane day. And once we shift our perception through the experience, not just the knowledge, but the experience, that's when our entire reality changes, both physically and vibrationally. So the increase of people having past life flashbacks, the increase of people having precognitive experiences or clairvoyant experiences. I've always known that we're all psychic. I've always known that we can all do these things. I truly believe we are all very powerful, but now I'm seeing it. Now everyday people are really truly having these experiences, which are awakening them to what else is possible, and allowing them to open up to other possibilities. So yeah, it's a very exciting time to be alive and to witness what's taking place.
Oh, Elizabeth April, thank you for your wisdom and sharing your journey and your insight. It is inspiring for others. And again, what a great world when everyone wakes up to this and owns it and lives it in this way. So thank you for being that beautiful leader and inspiring others and showing the way. As we wrap up, any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I mean, we covered a lot, but ultimately it's just realizing how powerful you are, and realizing that it's not seeking out a guru, a mentor, a teacher. It's not about reading the news. It's not about reading alternative news. It's not about actually anything external to who you are. Because once you create healthy boundaries to the rest of the world and all of the input and all of the projection and all of the energy around you, and you just realize that you're okay with nothing, is when you really open up to everything. So let go of the labels, let go of the identifiers, let go of the external information, and you will find exactly what you're looking for.
Beautiful. We are exiting the old matrix.
We are.
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Elizabeth April. This has been heart opening and consciousness expanding, and we have shifted. Thank you.
Thank you.